Hey everyone, this is Lauren Stine over here at Acctivate. I am the manager of implementation, and today we're going to go over some questions that were sent in through email as well as questions that are submitted during the webinar. And most of it's going to be related to Activate 10, but feel free to ask any generic Activate questions as well. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And we're going to start with sales orders. The majority of the questions I got through email were actually related to the sales order window redo that we did. And one of the questions that we were asked were, where did the ordered versus scheduled amounts go on the bottom of the order? We've actually had quite a few customers that asked us why those amounts were actually on the screen in the first place. And we also wanted to make sure that the updated version 10 would be more user-friendly when it comes to the sales and purchase order windows. And so to do that, we removed the ordered and scheduled amounts from the bottom of the window and left the subtotal, discount, tax, and total amounts. This goes along with the fresh look we're shooting for by cleaning up some of the fields that weren't necessarily in use. So let's take a look at that. Go to the sales order window, and I'll just grab a random sales order. And so you can see here that the subtotal is down here if you have a discount, which that is going to be, it's a text field. So if you have it to be percentage, you would put 10. If you wanted to do a dollar amount, you would put 1. And also the percentage, if you wanted it to be a percentage when your default is set to amount, you would just type the percent sign in that field. And also we have the tax category, the sales tax information down here, and the total of the order itself. And then if there's any payment information, that'll show here at the bottom. And then we've also got a payment tab over here. And we'll get into more detail on that stuff here in a minute. Now, we also had quite a few questions about the ship to location drop-down window. So the ship to location drop-down has moved to the header of the order. When you toggle this location, let me go ahead and do an order for somebody that I know has multiple ship to locations. So in edit mode, the location field is now at the top. And when you toggle this location, it will actually change the address and the ship to attention down below. So you can see here, I changed it to location 3182. Now it's the Sally Newton. We also have a ship to attention of Sally Newton. And if we change it to 4126, then you can change it to location to the Jim Jones. And then if you change it to Maine, then you can see that everything reverts back to the main. Also, if a user for some reason edits the address and adds, information here, and another user comes back to it later and they're like, hey, this is actually wrong, we need to reset this to what the address should be, you would hit edit, go into hit the little pencil to open the edit address info and hit reset, and that'll reset it back based on the ship to location that's selected at the header of the order. Now, we've also had some feedback on customer contacts and some misunderstanding on how the customer contacts default on the sales orders. Whenever you create a sales order, the customer contact is going to default based on the preferred ship to location. If you toggle the ship to location, it's not going to update the customer contact information. The logic behind this, when a user updates the contact information and then after they've updated the contact information, they go back and they want to change the ship to location to change the address, that user obviously isn't going to want to have to update that contact information again. They're going to want it to stick to what it was whenever they had it, whenever they created that order. So if you needed to once you've toggled the ship to location, if you needed to change the contact information, you would select the contact information from the drop down, and that's available when you're in edit mode. You just put the cursor in the name, a drop down will appear, and then you'll be able to select based on, like, if it's specific to the ship to location, you'll see the ship to location information there as well. We've also made some improvements with the way you select the shipping method for sales orders. In the sales order window, we have combined the carrier and service fields into a new service field. When selecting the shipping method of a sales order, you'll first select the ship via field. The ship via field is for the method of shipment and can be used as a shortcut to the carrier service when there's a default service set. This should be a generic type of shipping such as ground, express, customer pickup, etc. The drop-down menu will include those methods that you set up in Configuration Manager. Also, you would set up the ship via options in Configuration Manager, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. So now we just have the ship via and the service. So you see the description of the service here, the FedEx next day air. And so you would need, and then you have UPS next day air and early. And also you have the ship vias, which are the generic ship vias. And then if you needed more detailed information, the requested date that you used to see on the header is still on the header of the order. That's going to default based on what you have the days to ship in the sales order options and Configuration Manager. You can also update that in the requested date on the new shipping tab, as well as the promised not before and not after dates. And then also you can see here the carrier information. Now you have the ship via, the service, which you can see is UPS ground. If you do delivery routes and stops, you'd see that information here, as well as the FOB. And again, here you can edit the shipping address if you wanted to do it all on one screen. And that reset button is only available if you've edited the shipping address based on what's specified on the customer ship to location. And the carrier services are located in Configuration Manager. So this is where you would set up the carrier service, and the description is what shows up on the sales order. So you can see that you would need to specify that, this is a FedEx second day air, this is a FedEx next day air, this is UPS next day air, and so forth. On top of combining the ship via and carrier service information and the carrier information, we have also added an additional info tab. We've had a couple people ask, what is this additional info and what shows there. So let's go ahead and take a look at that in the demo. So we have this additional info tab. This is where you'll find the web order number, which is pre-filled if you're using your web order sync. And also we have an EDI store number, which if you're importing EDI orders and they have a mark for store number, that's where that information will go into. We also have the QuickBooks class if you have QuickBooks class tracking, and the salesperson. And then we've moved the ref 2 to the additional info tab. You can see that the default reference, the main reference information is still on the header of the sales order underneath the PO, but now reference 2 is on additional info. And also the job number based on the ship to location is going to be located on this additional info. And you can also see the timeline where you used to see the entered and status change dates on the main window. Since the main window is now mostly detail, address information, terms, branch, shipping information. We've also got special instructions, shipping instructions. We've moved that to the additional info tab since it's really just a reference. Also, if you had any sales order specific custom fields, like for the sales order as a whole, you would see those listed here on the right side of the screen under the custom information. I did also have somebody ask me about the credit card information on the payment tab. They were confused because the expiration date address isn't here inherently when you click on it. But what it is we've hidden that unless you actually select something that's specified as a credit card. So if you hit a payment method that's a credit card that's marked as a credit card in Configuration Manager, you'll now have the credit card number, expiration date, security code, the name on the card, address, zip code. And then if you use our authorize.net integration, you can click this authorize and it will authorize the credit card here on the sales order window before you invoice. So another question that we've actually been asked is the screenshot button, it's been removed from the icon bar. Some customers were receiving errors using that screenshot button, and since there are other options inherently in Windows, we've actually removed that button from within Acctivate. So other options include using the print screen button on your keyboard and pasting the image into another program like Microsoft Office or Paint. Windows also comes with a program called Snipping Tool, which can be used to draw on or highlight specific things if you're sending screenshots to our support team. And internally, we use a program called Snagit for screenshots. That's how we get all the screenshots that you see on our help site. This is a third-party app which requires a license to use, so you would have to purchase it. But like I said, you can use the print screen button on your keyboard, or you can use the Windows snipping tool that's already with Microsoft Office. So that is the end of the ones that I got through email. So I'm going to go ahead and take a second to look through the questions that are being submitted live. Okay, we've got a question here about the new color scheme feature. So what we've got is the ability to change the color based on the Acctivate company that you're logged into. If for some reason you don't like the Acctivate blue, which personally I love this Acctivate blue, but if for some reason you don't like it, you can go to company info, window color. There's a preset list of colors right here, and then you can also do a custom color. We've got basic colors, and then you also have the ability to define a custom color. So let's say you want it to be this purple. Click OK, and now you can see that everything's purple instead of blue. That's a really cool feature. So if you have multiple Acctivate companies, now just like QuickBooks, you can go in and change the specific color that you would see on each specific Acctivate company. So you can say, I need you to log into the purple Acctivate company or the red Acctivate company, and then the users can know, which company they're talking about. And also when they're logged in, they understand that, I'm in the purple company, so, maybe this is our distribution company, and maybe you have a green company that's your manufacturing company if you have those split up into separate company files for your QuickBooks files, therefore separate Acctivate companies. So that's a cool new feature that we have. Also, if you change the color in Configuration Manager for your company, we got asked, does that change the icon color on your desktop? Nope, the icon on your desktop will always be Acctivate blue unless in some future date we update that logo again, which I highly doubt because all of us at Acctivate definitely love that new Acctivate A and the Acctivate blue. The icon is going to stay the same. It works really well, and we've had a lot of good feedback about that as well. We had a question about, could it be configurable for the customer to see, or for the user to see that's ordered versus scheduled amounts? Currently, there's not an option to show those fields on the sales order. You're only going to see at the bottom the subtotal, discount, tax, total, and payment information. Let us know if that's something that, has to be there, and if, we can submit an enhancement request or something like that, maybe to add it back to the screens if that's something that everybody wants to see back. That goes for, if you have any feedback on the changes that were put on the sales order or purchase order windows, feel free to submit support requests to let us know that, hey, this field is really important to me and we really need it. So, we need to know about that stuff. Yes, we did send Acctivate out to quite a few of our customers to test with so we could get feedback like that before we released it. But of course, just now most of our customer base is updating to 10, so we're still getting feedback. So don't be afraid to let us know if you're not seeing something that you really need to see on the screen. We also had a question about the syncing with QuickBooks, if the actual sync process has changed at all. There aren't any changes in terms of what syncs between Acctivate and QuickBooks, but the window itself has changed slightly. Now it starts out, you can see the Acctivate with QuickBooks logos, but you have to click this options to change anything. Like if you didn't want to run a full sync for some reason, obviously we don't recommend that. You would uncheck full sync. You can do just customers and invoices, none, accounts payable. That's really the only thing that's changed for the sync. And again, it's just the window itself. Once you actually start the sync, it'll show you each specific section that it's going through, just like it used to. It just looks a little cleaner now. We have a question on how stable is version 10 on Windows 10. It's actually quite stable. We haven't really had any reports of problems specific to Windows 10, and internally we've had quite a few support members, including myself, update to Windows 10, and we're running Windows 10 on our demos on our PCs, and I personally haven't seen any issue related to Windows 10 specifically either. So I can definitely attest to, it's definitely stable on Windows 10. You shouldn't have any problem if you want to go ahead and update to Windows 10. Okay, we have a question on, is there a way to set reminders for follow-ups similar to Outlook? We do have the Notes tab, and that's available on most Windows in Acctivate. This Notes right here. You can set a follow-up date, follow-up user, and also a note, and it'll set the added. Here, we'll go ahead and set one. Can't believe it's already almost 2016. It's just flown by. And so now we have this note. Now it's not going to be like Outlook, like if you're using your Outlook calendar, a window pops up on screen and tells you, hey, you've got this appointment that's about to start in 15 minutes. Do you want to snooze? Do you want to look at the items so you can go ahead and start researching for the meeting? But it will show up in your alerts menu under reminders. So now you can see this new note that I just added, and let's say it's January 1st, or if you wanted to call them, let's say we called them tomorrow, and we wanted to get it done because we're going to be closed on the 1st. So you would check this box, and then when you hit refresh, it will be removed from that reminders window. So it's not going to be exactly like Outlook where it pops up, but you will have this business alerts reminders window, and you can set this to a specific due date. You can do anytime, which is going to show all reminders. You can do on, and you select a specific date, on or before, due after, or overdue. Obviously all these are going to be overdue, so that's not going to change anything. You can also change whose reminders you're looking at, and that's based on the user permissions. And then also if you highlight one, you can view selected item, and it'll open up the window that's associated with that note. So you see that here, and you can look at the detail of the sales order. And this also tells you what document it's on. So sales order, customer, product, business activity, purchase order, all those windows is where you can add that information. Is there a way to export reports to Excel in table formats? You can export reports to Excel. That's definitely something that's been a feature in Acctivate for a while, ever since I've worked here for sure. You can go to a specific, let's see, something that'll actually have information. And we'll do session 4 because we saw that earlier. So what you would do is you would hit this little save icon, and you would select the specific Excel data only, or if you wanted to keep the formatting, it would be Microsoft Excel. hit OK. And you can, create page breaks for each page, convert date values to string, show grid lines. You can do page header information. If you hit OK, you would save it. We'll just save it on the desktop. And so, I'm sure the person is asking because they wanted to export it in a way that they can edit it. Because obviously, if you export this report with all the formatting from Acctivate, it may not line up exactly the way you want to. If you do data only, definitely sometimes it changes what columns they print in. You can actually get reports modified either during the implementation. If you're still in implementation, we can modify some reports to be in a format that would export the way that you wanted it to in specific columns. You could get with some of our Acctivate consulting partners to work with reports to get you specific reports that you would, maybe if you have reports that you are running outside of Acctivate that you're currently manually entering, you can set up a report with Crystal Reports so that way you can just go to the reports, run it, hit preview, save it to Excel, and open it, and it's just there ready to go for you to do whatever you need to do in Excel. We do have a question on how to charge a credit card in Acctivate. When you have QuickBooks Merchant Services or Authorize.net, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set that up. I don't have a demo account for both of those to set those up and actually show you that information right now. I'm not sure what this API login and transaction key is for. I don't know if it's active or not. So you would just I'm going to hit unconfigure so you can see this. Whenever you don't have credit card processing set up already, you would go here, go to services, credit card processing. This is where you would configure it, authorize.net, and then you would set, that configuration information that you just saw, and then also QuickBooks Merchant Services, just like you would have done in previous versions of Acctivate, but now we also have authorize.net, which gives you the ability to pre-authorize credit cards. So once you have that set up and you want to process credit cards with an order, now again, this isn't going to be after you've invoiced and synchronized that invoice to QuickBooks. This is going to be before invoicing or during the invoice process, depending on which service you use. So you go to the payment tab. If you're doing it from the sales order, you can do Visa, MasterCard. You'd enter in all the information and you'd click authorize to authorize that card if you're using authorize.net. Now, when you're ready to invoice, you would hit create invoice. That credit card information populates on the release invoice window, and this charge credit card is checked. So when you click invoice, that actually sends that credit card information stored on this window to whichever service provider that you have selected in Configuration Manager, and they process the credit card and send us back, it either passed or failed. And then in QuickBooks, you would reconcile that information that you get back from your merchant. And we do have a couple of questions about customer contacts, which we did do quite a bit of work on customer contact functionality between the major release and the first service pack. We've got a couple of customers that are already using the service pack. That contact information, if you were seeing maybe it wasn't showing properly or something like that, it definitely is working the way that you would expect it to work in the service pack. So if you're having issues with this and you'd like to update to that service pack, then contact our support team and we'll definitely be glad to send you a link to download the first service pack. We got asked about, are we able to auto pick lot information for order picking? We don't currently have the ability to auto pick lots at the moment. However, we do have an enhancement request our development team is aware of and is being reviewed. So we're definitely taking a look at auto assignment of lots. Maybe it would be a configuration option or something if that's something that you would want to do. We just don't have a whole lot of customers that would want auto assignment of lots just because, it's not going to be based on like the lot number itself. Like they're going to want to look at the full window to see, okay, well, we use this lot and this lot and this lot. It's not necessarily in a specific order. But if that is something that you need immediately, We have worked with one of our consultants that has created, based on updating workflow status, to auto assign lot numbers to orders. So if you wanted their information, we can definitely send you that information and get you in touch with them if that's something that you need like right now. And you can talk to them about the program that they've created. And we did have a question about reports not opening in full screen. You're constantly resizing the screens. That is actually one of the fixes that we have in the first service pack. So if that is an issue that you've run into quite a bit and you want it resolved right now, you can contact our support team and we can give you the link to update to that first service pack. But, it's not going to recall the size of each specific report. So if it was full screen and you open another report, that next report is going to open full screen. If it wasn't full screen, if you open another report, it's not going to be full screen. It's going to be based on the last open report. We've got a question about being able to change an order back to quote once it's been scheduled. That hasn't changed in Acctivate 10. Once a quote has been scheduled, you're not going to be able to move it to quote status. You can move it back to booked, but you're not going to be able to move it back to quote. Now, in implementation, I did have one customer that needed to keep the quotes saved. So what they would do is they would create a quote. They would, once everything is approved, any changes that are made, they would copy that quote and then give it a different order number. So the order number would be the same order number as the original quote, and then it would be -AR or -SO or something like that. They would add that suffix to the end of the order number. And then that is the order that they would go all the way through from scheduling to invoice. And what they would do with that original quote is that they would, cancel it, and they would give it a cancellation reason of, move to order number A1523T or something like that. So that way they would have a full list of their quotes that they did as well as their orders. If that would be something that you would be interested in, you can definitely contact our support team and we can go over that process in more detail. And back to the credit card processing. On the sales order, you're authorizing the card. So when you hit authorize, it sends that card information to authorize.net. They say, yes, this card is good, or no, this card is bad. And they give that information, it notifies you. And then when you invoice, that's when it actually processes the full order amount. We do have some questions about EDI. There is a full Acctivate EDI webinar. So go to Learn Acctivate webinars. This EDI processing and Acctivate, I go into great detail on the entire process of EDI in version 10. So if you're using EDI a lot and you're skeptical about updating to version 10, watch that webinar so you can see that not only does it work seamlessly in version 10, but you also have more functionality in version 10. And when you update, you don't have to change anything for your EDI setup. It's all copied over into the new EDI configuration. And I'll show you that EDI configuration real quick. I'm not going to go through the whole process. And like I said, we do have that full webinar on EDI in 10. Now we have an EDI trading partner set up here, and you can set up specific transactions. You can set up specific options. All this information is going to be created in Configuration Manager if it's already set up in version 9 or earlier whenever you update. The only reason you would need to go in here is to maybe if you wanted to verify that everything was set up correctly, or if you wanted to change some options, because we do have, you can change that on screen here instead of having to contact support for everything. Also, if you needed to add partners, remove partners, you can only remove them if they haven't been used, but you can make them inactive. If you uncheck this enabled box for like customer purchase orders for the specific trading partner, it won't show up on the EDI tool anymore. And just to show you the tool, the ones that you would send out, like the advanced ship notice, warehouse order, and customer invoice, you'll see each trading partner listed, and you'll see if there are any transactions. And we actually get this question, we've been getting it quite a bit, especially lately since a lot of people are moving to email. Are we able to batch email invoices? We currently don't have the option to batch email anything at the moment. We do have enhancement requests to add that capability. That is a pretty major code change for some of the windows. So let us know who's interested in that so we can add you to the ticket so it can be available in future Acctivate versions. Also, if you're curious, everything that's been put into version 10, learn Acctivate, release history, and you can just search version 10, but from the release history, you can click that version 10 link. And this is a list of all the major improvements are going to be up here at the top. We also have a list of some of the other improvements or bug fixes or anything or changes, like Quick Quote has been renamed to Price Check. That's one of the things that's been completely renamed. Another thing that's been worked on are the lookup windows. We have changed the way that it pages whenever you open a lookup window, so the lookups are much faster for customers that have huge data sets. So for products or customers or sales order lookups, that should be a lot faster for everybody, especially a large database with a bunch of data that's going to be pulling into that lookup window. So that's a great improvement that we've had in version 10. Do we have any ability to archive data so you could get around upgrading SQL Server? We currently don't have any plans to do any kind of condense function for Acctivate. QuickBooks does have a condense function, which is supported with Acctivate if you use the QuickBooks condense function. We don't support if you use third-party apps to condense your data. You do need to use the QuickBooks function because that marks transactions and information for Acctivate to see that, hey, this has been condensed in QuickBooks. The SQL Server limit is 10 gigabytes. So if you're reaching that 10 gigabyte, then we would always recommend updating to SQL 2014 so you can get that higher limit. It will also increase your processing speed for SQL Server. So if you have, like 10 to 20 users logged in at Acctivate at one time, that's definitely a conversation that you may want to have with your IT department or contact our support team about updating SQL Server. Can you show us how to use a sales order management in a real life scenario? We didn't change the sales order management screen in version 10. The scheduling wizard, that was done in version 9, but just an overview, the green lines mean that all lines on the order are scheduled. The yellow dot means that there are a mix of back-ordered and scheduled lines, and the red dot means that all lines are set to back order. We also have, if you wanted to do, let's say if you start out your orders as booked orders, you would change this type to booked. You either check the single one, you can check this checkbox up here to uncheck or check all, and then you would hit schedule, and that actually changes the order status to scheduled. So now you'll see that order on the scheduled orders window. Also, if you wanted to schedule a bunch of orders based on a specific, let's see, I don't think we have any workflow status. You could do workflow status, everything's green. The requested date, we could do overdue requested dates, or if there's a promise date, it'll filter based on that as well. So you could go through here and see these yellow ones. You could also filter based on the color. So obviously you don't need to reschedule the ones that are green because they're all scheduled. These are a mix. So you would go through, check these, hit schedule, and Acctivate based on the order number will go through and schedule based on your current availability. Now that's based on any posted transactions as of the time you click schedule. So if we hit schedule, it goes through 1501. That was one of the orders that is scheduled. Now it's completely scheduled. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the sales order management. We have quite a few customers that are using that now. If you have any specific questions on the full functionality of that, we do have a webinar that goes over business alerts. So again, learn, Acctivate, and webinars, and it's business alerts. And this is a full webinar specifically on the business alerts, including the sales order management window of business alerts. It gives you every little detail that you could even possibly want to know about business alerts. And if you have any questions after that, then definitely feel free to contact us and we can give you more in-depth information on that. We had a question about shortcut keys. We do have some existing shortcuts. We don't necessarily have, the function shortcuts like F2 or F3 right now. So if you go to shortcuts, we have an article on keyboard shortcuts. The F4 button, that is one that's a function button. If you press that while you're in like a product ID field, it'll pull up the search window. That pulls up the search window for most windows that you're looking at. Also, we do have F5 to refresh, just like as if you were on a web page, and then F1 for a help file. And that'll open a help page based on the specific window that you're on. So if you need information on a sales order, you hit F1. It'll pull up the help site, the tour guide on how to enter a sales order. So that'll give you the information you need for a sales order window. And if you want, maybe I didn't necessarily need the whole sales order. Maybe I needed payment or order detail or something like that. Then you can search while you're on the help page and take a look at that information. For emails, how do you see the emails that were sent? I don't know of a specific order that I have emails, but you can drag and drop from Outlook into a sales order window. When you're dragging and dropping from Outlook, you don't need to be in edit mode in Acctivate. It'll actually go ahead and put that in the email field. And then if you select an email, you'll see in this preview screen, you'll see who sent it, what email they sent it from, and what email they sent it to, as well as the subject. And the from can default based on the user configuration for that specific user. And you have the option to do MAPI, which uses your Outlook connection, or you can do SMTP, which directly uses your email server. So if you're using like Office 365, internally we all have it set up as SMTP instead of MAPI, because you can actually set up, your email address and the specific password. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to go to our help site. That's help.activate, spelled with 2 C's.com. You can search in that search here box at the top right hand. You can go to the different menus to, look up specific information. Also, our downloads page is no longer password protected because when you update to version 10, you'll be prompted to use your username, your Acctivate user ID and password on the update. So again, that downloads page is no longer password protected, but your support requests still are. I hope you got some good information from this webinar, and I hope you have a great new year and a successful 2016. Have a good day, everybody.